Hey, Jamie here, and welcome to Module 9, Part 3, where we're going to start talking through how do you prepare for what I like to call game day, the day that you're actually going to be doing your interview. So in Parts 1 and 2, we talked about the approach, and we also talked about how to prepare and practice. In this part, we're really focusing on what do you need to do on the day of the interview, as well as during the interview. So we're going to understand how to best prepare yourself mentally and emotionally before the interview, how to best perform during the interview, and then how to best end the interview, as well as follow up after the interview, and also understand when and how to follow up if you haven't heard back following an interview. Sometimes you may not hear as to when the recruiter will mention the next steps or when the manager will make a decision. And so if there's been a period of time, we'll talk about how long, but then also what do you want to say when you do follow up, because you don't want to come across as a pest or a needy or anything like that. So to start off with, there are going to be three primary things that affect your performance during the interview. And the first one that we talked about in depth in part 2 is the level that you prepare and practice before the interview will massively affect not only the quality of your responses, but how confident you feel going into the interview. If you know, without a doubt, that you've put in the time, you've done the work, and you walk in knowing that I'm confident, I'm prepared, I know what I'm going to say, and I know why I am going to be a valuable asset to this team and to the company, you're going to outperform other people, hands down, every time. The second major part is your mindset going into the interview. And the mindset, I know this sounds really mushy and foo-foo and people are like, a mindset, whatever. But this is like, I think the most clear and perfect example where mindset absolutely destroyed performance is, so I read about the history of Michael Phelps. How did Michael Phelps become the world's best swimmer? And not only the world's best swimmer, but the most decorated Olympian in history. And the book written by Bob Bowman, who was his coach, in one of the sections of the book, he talked about how Phelps, before his London Olympic swim meet, he wasn't in the right mindset. And here was the man who was the world's best swimmer at the time. He had broken all the records, or all of his swim records, and going into that London Olympics, his mind wasn't in the right place. And in his first heat, he came in 4th or 5th place when he knew he'd previously beaten all the other swimmers. And he knew he was still capable of doing so. But afterwards, in kind of the post-heat breakdown, when he was talking with Bob Bowman, Michael immediately told him, he was like, my mindset was not in the right place. I know I was not ready for that race. Physically, he was. Mentally, he wasn't. And if you study the greats of basketball, and I love using them as examples, again, you could have the best talent in the world. If the mindset's not aligned, you're going to underperform. So we'll really talk about how do you make sure that mindset-wise, going into the interview, you are ready to go 90 to 100%. And then the third is going to be your physiological state going into the interview. And physiological is your actual body. If you're walking into an interview with 4 hours of sleep, or you have too much caffeine in your system and you're literally jittery, there's how you prep yourself physically is just as important as how you're prepping yourself mentally. So those are the three main areas. So now let's quickly break those down. So in part 2, we've already covered this, but preparation and practice. The very first thing you want to do is master your content. You want to bullet point out your responses, practice reading through the responses until you've internalized them. And then once you've internalized them, you want to practice looking away and making sure that you can do it without looking at the bullet points. Once you've done that, then you want to start recording yourself and then listen to your recordings. How do you sound? Do you sound natural? Do you sound confident? Does it sound like you're having a conversation? Or do you sound monotone and boring? And then the last part is you want to master your delivery. So recording yourself using video, as well as working with other people, doing mock interviews, and getting feedback on your body language. Are you remembering to smile? Do you look like pleasant? I mean, do you look engaged? Or do you look like you're miserable and you're stressed and you're anxious? Body language is super important, and the only way to know how well you're doing your delivery non-verbally is you need to look at yourself. And I know it's so uncomfortable to record yourself. Even doing a phone recording is uncomfortable. Actually, visually recording yourself is even more uncomfortable, but it's the work that has to get done in order to get yourself to that top level of performance. Okay, so now mindset. We've talked a little bit about this, but I want to dig a little bit more into this, and I'll show you the pre-mindset conditioning sheet for before interviews. But in terms of mindset, you never want to forget don't think of it as an interview. Think of it as two professionals or maybe more, but you're a service provider, you know your value, and you're showing up to a conversation where you're going to learn about an opportunity for your career, and they're going to learn about you and your background, what you've done and what you have to offer. And then really the point of the conversation is this a mutual fit? Are you what they're looking for? And are they what you're looking for? And if it is, awesome. Continue the conversations, keep moving forward. If it's not, maybe you walk away. Maybe you realize that, no, I don't want to work there. And maybe they realize that, hey, you seem like an incredible professional, but you don't have what specifically we're looking for. Either way, it's a conversation, not a one-sided interview. Never forget that it is a professional conversation. And one of the things I love to remind people is the person sitting across the table or on the other side of the screen from you, they might be 10, 20, 30 years older than you. It doesn't matter. They put their pants on one leg at a time. They still eat breakfast in the morning, take showers, go for walks. Like, they're human beings. And one of the other things that I love to remember is just because someone is super well respected and really important in a company, it doesn't make them a better human being. It doesn't make them a more valuable in the creator's eyes or a more valuable human being. It just means that professionally, economically, and financially, they're, quote, more successful than maybe where you are today. That should not affect your self-confidence. You need to believe in yourself, your professional value, who you are as an individual, your beliefs, your values, your self-identity. Never forget that the person you're talking to, they might be more experienced. It doesn't mean it should be intimidating. They put their pants on one leg at a time. Okay, so in terms of how you want to be approaching it, remember it's between the mindsets. It's between student and peer. And the way that you can think about that is you're pleasant, you're respectful, and you're serious. And never forget that you do not need the job. You're evaluating the opportunity just as much as they are evaluating you. You don't need the job. You know how to create more opportunities for yourself. And then the third is the physiological state. So absolutely, no matter what, if you know you have an interview, you need 7 to 8 hours of sleep to make sure that you're not tired, your brain is working quickly. Brain fog is when you're tired. When you're tired, you literally cannot think at your optimum level. Same thing as when you're very sad or upset or depressed or angry. It's your limbic system, which is your emotional brain, if you will. Your limbic brain is directly connected to your neocortex, which is your logical brain. So kind of we have 3 different levels of brain, if you will. We have our primitive, and then we have the limbic, which is the emotion, and then we have the neocortex, which is really the logic and decision making. They're all connected. So if your physiological or emotional state is impaired, your cognitive ability is directly impaired. So you need to have the right amount of sleep, and you also want to make sure that you're doing your routine in the morning so that you're feeling both physically and mentally. Because remember, we talked about earlier in Module 4, the personal performance. You have 2 systems. You have your body and you have your mind. You want to make sure that both systems are operating at 90 to 100% the day of the interview. You're crushing it. You feel great. You want to limit the caffeine. Sometimes if you have too much caffeine, you might be jittery. And sometimes if you're too caffeinated, you become too easily stressed or anxious or worried or anything like that. So limit it. Only have 1 to 2 cups max, and then a light meal 1 to 2 hours beforehand. So you don't feel bloated or full, but you also don't feel tired. So if you have a really large meal, all the blood, or not all the blood, a lot of blood will be moved to your stomach. It's going to increase your heart rate, which also will make you feel more susceptible to feeling stressed or anxious. But digesting is energy intensive. So if you have a big meal, you will feel more tired for the interview. So light meal 1 to 2 hours before. Obviously, make sure you go to the bathroom before the interview so you're not, there's nothing more uncomfortable than having to go to the bathroom and knowing that you can't for the next hour or 30 minutes or sometimes if it's a super day or something like that or round robin interviews, it could be 4 hours. So last part is totally focused, no distractions. If you're interviewing remotely, make sure that the doors are closed. You're in a position where no one's going to walk through the door and interrupt you. Turn your phone off. So if you don't want to turn it fully off, I recommend literally turning it fully off. If you don't want to turn it fully off, make sure you turn it on Do Not Disturb and on Vibrate. Because if you have it on Do Not Disturb, your favorite contacts list, if they call you, they can still get through. So I recommend Do Not Disturb and on Vibrate, or better yet, just turn literally everything off. Okay, so how to perform and communicate in your interview. So humans communicate in 3 ways, and you most likely know this, but in terms of breaking down how that's communicated is roughly based on these percentages. Now, the percentages are still debated, and I'm not going to go into that, but the biggest takeaway is that your tone of voice and your body language are much more influential initially than the words that you're saying. So have you ever had it where you're talking with somebody and they say something and you know it sounds right, but you just don't believe them? Or someone says something and it's utter bullshit, but you believed it at the time because they were so convincing. That's because the tone of voice and their body language was captivating. Or maybe they're saying something that is true, but because of their tone of voice and their body language, you don't believe them. Something's off. It's incongruent. So the way that you can think about congruency, and in the interview, you need to be congruent. Congruency is when what you're saying directly aligns with and confirms along with your tone of voice and your body language. So if someone says, imagine that someone were to say, yeah, I'm really excited about this opportunity. I cannot wait to join your team. Well, your tone of voice doesn't say that, and most likely your body language is not showing excitement. So what you're saying needs to directly align with the tone of voice as well as your body language. And in terms of how you're going to influence the interviewer, because of these breakdowns, so if 55% of communication is body language, the moment that you turn on your computer or enter the video chat or walk into the room or start talking on the phone, your tone of voice and your body language, that's 93% based on these numbers. So immediately that's going to form the first impression and tell the interviewer what to think about you. So you got to make sure that the tone of voice and the body language are confident, calm, conversational, and natural, because that will amplify the words that you're saying. So, body language, how to think about it. 3 main things in the interview or in any conversation really, but you're going to have facial expressions, body posture, and hand gestures. So your facial expressions are you want to be smiling, you want to come across as inviting, and you also want to be personable. Now, the interviewer can instantly, all of us can tell the difference between a genuine smile and a fake smile. And the easiest way to tell is someone's eyes. Do someone's eyes look and communicate that they actually are happy or comfortable? And this is something that I know it sounds crazy here, but you can actually practice in a mirror. Look at yourself in the mirror and practice smiling, and you can see the difference between a genuine smile and a fake smile. And the more that you practice the genuine smile, you can kind of call it on command. And when you're in the interview, you want to practice doing this when you're doing your delivery practice, but make sure that you are smiling and you do look pleasant and you do look like you're having a good time in the interview, because no one likes talking to someone who's straight-faced. because it's uncomfortable, and worse off, if someone in their mind thinks, do I want to work with this person for 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week? Well, if that 30 minutes is uncomfortable and not fun for the other person, they're not going to want to work with you. So, body posture, you want to make sure that you're comfortable in your chair, you're engaged, and you're attentive. So think of this as you're leaning a little forward. You're not super slouched or leaning too far back in your chair. And one tip that I have for you in terms of making sure that body posture wise you look your best, don't sit all the way back in your chair. Sit on the edge or the front edge of the chair. So sit forward, like move your butt. So think of where your butt cheeks are sitting. Move it to the edge of the chair, like the very end of the chair. So half your butt is on the chair and the other half of your butt is off of the chair. What this is going to do is it forces your back to be straight. It forces you to sit upright, and it also forces you to have both of your feet planted firmly on the ground. This, I promise, will further communicate confidence in your body posture. And then in terms of hand gestures, how do you want to use your hands during the interview? When you're listening, I recommend having them folded in your lap or folded in front of you if there's a table and it looks natural. So when you're listening, have them folded together. So the way that I fold my hands is I take my right hand or my left hand and I just simply lay it on top of the other one and then kind of put my thumbs together. And the reason I recommend folding your hands is it's a respectful gesture. Now, some people, they will literally take their fingertips and put them together like a triangle or like a temple. Never do that. Ever, never, ever do that. It screams arrogance. It screams like you're trying to overcompensate and communicate that I am in power. I am confident. I am self-assured. It's people who are self-assured don't need to communicate it. So if anything, put your palms together, rest one hand on top of the other, and that's a very respectful way of showing someone you're listening. And then when you're talking, there's two different ways that people use hand gestures when they're talking. Some people point or have their palms facing down. That's usually a signal of someone who needs to try to prove themselves, or someone who's aggressive, or someone, and I know this sounds a little far-fetched, but the research has shown that how you interpret yourself and other people can absolutely be seen in how you communicate with your hands and your body. So the way that you can express that you're open, you're team-oriented, you're a natural conversational leader, you're empathetic, have your palms facing up. And if you watch any of the speeches by the world's best public speakers, they're almost always speaking with their palms up. So in your interview, always remember that. When you're talking, you want to talk with your palms facing up and open-handed. And then, of course, if you're taking notes, which I recommend don't take too many notes. Only jot down a couple, and maybe that's only when you're asking them questions. So body language, and the reason body language, again, is so important, you could not say anything, and they'll know whether or not they want to work with you. Simply based on how confident are you sitting, how do you look, do you look comfortable? Okay, so tone of voice, lively, natural, and conversational, confident and self-assured, and interested and energized. Think of tone of voice as following your body language. If you truly do feel comfortable, you're in a confident body posture, you're sitting properly, your back's upright, you have a warm facial expression, you're smiling, you genuinely feel excited for the interview, your tone of voice will absolutely reflect this. So think of your tone of voice as a direct connection in following your body language. And then finally is the words and the actual responses of what you're saying. This is something you prepare beforehand, like we talked about in part 2 of this module. But your words will also be amplified by the tone of voice that you have and the body language that you're communicating. Okay, so now the order in which people will listen to you. So how your interviewer will listen to you. Well, the very first thing that the interviewer is going to think about and actually not even think about, but subconsciously think about, is the moment they start talking or you start talking, the interview begins, instantly they form a first impression about you. They're going to read your body language, they're going to read your facial expression, and immediately they're going to subconsciously decide, is this a confident person? Are they stressed? Are they anxious? What do they believe about themselves? All of that is picked up instantly. And that's why your body language is so important, because that body language is going to communicate to them how should they think about you, which is going to feed into their subconscious biases. They're trying to categorize you whether they want to or not. They will instantly categorize you into a confident person, a not confident person, someone who's prepared, someone who's not prepared, and they get all that from your body language. Then the second thing they're going to do is consciously think and judge you. And this is going to be throughout the entire interview, because they're going to have subconscious biases and thoughts about you, but then also based on how you're presenting yourself, your body language, your tone of voice, as well as what you're saying, they're going to consciously think and judge you. And then finally is they're going to be actively listening for positive and negative confirmation of their biases. So if they, just as an example of this, so let's say you show up and you enter into the conversation and immediately you communicate that you're confident, you have a strong body posture, you have a warm and inviting facial expression, you're smiling, your eyes are a little bit wider, and it just looks like you're really engaged and excited for the conversation. Well, instantly, their subconscious bias is going to be, I like this person. You know, they seem confident, they seem warm, they seem inviting. I think this is going to be a good conversation. Well, then the conscious thoughts and judgments are going to be, they'll ask you questions, and as you're responding, they're going to be watching your body language. They're going to be hearing your tone of voice and listening to your responses. Well, they're going to form judgments. Well, those judgments are going to be skewed, and they're going to be skewed based on whether or not they had a good initial first impression about you or a negative first impression about you. And as they're listening, they're going to be trying to confirm their bias. So that's why it's so important to nail your story, as well as walk in with a strong mindset and a confident, conversational and natural body posture and tonality. It will absolutely affect how they listen to the responses that you're saying. Super, super important. Okay. And these first two are nonverbal, and the last one is actually verbally what you're saying. Okay. So building rapport through mirroring. And we talked a little bit about mirroring earlier on, but where this plays into the interview is you can adjust your tonality and your body posture to resonate with the interviewer's energy level, his or her tone of voice, and body language. So sometimes if your interviewer, let's say that your interviewer talks like this. They talk slowly, calm, collected, and maybe not as high of a pitch. Well, when you're responding, you want to talk with a similar tonality, a similar energy level, and a similar pitch. But now let's say you have an interviewer who talks and I personally talk quickly, and I know that, and I vary in tonality quite a bit. So if someone's talking to me, or if I'm interviewing somebody, I want someone who's going to match my energy level. I want someone who's quick, who's ready to talk, who's ready to go, and can get their point across quickly, succinctly, and accurately. Who you're interviewing with, people like people who are like themselves. So the more that you can match the body language and the tonality of the interviewer, he or she will actually like you more. And this is hard to do because this takes practice. It's not something that you normally think about. This is not a common thing people think about. But this is why it's so important to prepare and practice your responses beforehand, because if you know what you're going to say and you've mastered your content, you can actually think about these types of things like mirroring during an interview when nobody else can. Because when everyone else is trying to think of a response, you already know your response. Instead, you're thinking at a higher level of intuition. You're actually reading their body language, reading their energy tone, their tonality, and you're actually mirroring them. That will put you head and shoulders above other interviewers. So mirroring is very powerful. All right, so now let's talk about during the interview. You want to bring a journal and have your notes in there. So if you've taken notes on the company, I recommend having those in your journal as well as your prepared questions for the interviewers. So then I only recommend taking a few notes. Now, one thing that I've seen several people do is they take a couple notes in the beginning and then they go, oh, I can't, I don't want them to think that what they're saying now is not important. So then they take notes throughout the entire interview. Don't get trapped into that. Instead, what you want to do is focus 100% on the professional conversation. If something is specific or an important detail that they mentioned that you want to jot down, go ahead. But even when you're asking them questions, your powerful questions, you don't want to write notes on everything that they say. Instead, jot down a few notes. But that's it. Don't get sucked in and trapped taking notes. Focus on the conversation. And then, all right, so finishing the interview. Before you walk out or before you finish the conversation, you always want to make sure that you express why you believe you're fit and how you would be able to add value to their team or to the company. This is your pitch. This is you pitching your value to them. You're a service provider. All businesses must pitch their services. So that's the value pitch. But then you also want to show deep appreciation for their time and for the opportunity to learn more about the position. So thank them at the end of the interview, but then also ask for their email address to send a thank you note. Now, some interviewers might be hesitant to give their email address if all you ask for is, hey, would you mind if I ask for your email address? Immediately in their mind, they go, why do you want it? Are you going to spam me? And then they immediately think of all these negative possible things. So instead, and that's just human nature. We always think of the bad before the good. So what I recommend is make sure you explain why you're asking for their email address. So at the end of the interview, you could say something along the lines of, hey, thank you so much for your time today. I've really appreciated learning more about this opportunity, about your experiences with the company, and having the opportunity to share why I believe I'm a good fit. If you wouldn't mind, I'd love to ask for your email address so I can send you a thank you note. Well, now they know why you're asking for their email address. More often than not, they'll be willing to share their email address because they know you're going to send a thank you note. Okay, so now following the interview, make sure to send that thank you note within 6 hours. Some people say within 24 hours or the next day. Get it done with. Get it done with. You're fresh in their mind. They're fresh in your mind. I recommend just do it within 6 hours. And it also shows promptness. The timing of a message, even if you're sending someone a text message, the timing of a message communicates a lot about what you believe and how you operate personally and professionally. And a simple example would be, imagine that you're really interested in someone, whether it's a boy or a girl or a guy or woman, and you send them a message and then they respond 24 hours later. How would that make you feel? And what do you immediately start thinking? Now, it's not exactly the same in the professional world, but it's still similar because it's still people. You're working with people, and people have human behaviors and human emotions. So get it done within 6 hours, and you're communicating to them, I'm taking this very seriously. I'm very interested in the opportunity, and I want to express thank you the day of. So within 6 hours. Doesn't need to be a too long of an email or anything too complex. This is what I recommend for a simple follow-up thank you post-interview. You can see here I have a subject line for the email. Thank you for your time, - your full name, interview, the date of the interview. Hi, Emily. Thank you again for the opportunity to interview with you and the rest of your team at. So if you interviewed with a group or multiple different people, that's where you can include this little section there. I really enjoyed learning more about, and then include 1 or 2 specific points related to the interview and the conversation that you had. So 1 or 2 things that you really did learn that were interesting. I would love for the opportunity to work with you and your team, again, whoever you interviewed with. I believe I'd mesh well with the culture and would contribute valuable skills with a strong work ethic. As a brief summary, I believe I'd be a great fit for this position for the following reasons. And then this is where you're including your 3 value propositions. Now, the reason this is so powerful is you have these value propositions on your LinkedIn. So they've looked at your LinkedIn, they've seen your value props there. They then saw your resume. These 3 value props were on your resume. They saw your cover letter. These 3 value propositions were on your cover letter. They interviewed you and you pitched your value propositions at the end of the interview, those 3 value props. And now, again, in the thank you note, you're pitching them again, the 3 value propositions. So what you're doing is you're stacking over and over and over and over and over. You're stacking and reconfirming the beliefs that I bring these 3 things to the table. Your interviewers will appreciate this. But there's also another benefit to this, which is you're giving them the framework for how to sell you internally to the company. So maybe you interview with 1 person or 2 people, but there's actually a group of, call it 8 or 10 people that are making the hiring decision. Well, by sending them this email with the points 1, 2, 3, this is what I have to offer, what you're doing is you're giving them the framework to speak to. So when all 8 or 10 people gather together and discuss all the people that were interviewed for the position, they might actually print off your email, go to that conversation and say, well, I believe that this person is a phenomenal fit for 3 reasons. Boom, boom, boom. And you're literally spoon feeding them what to say. So this is super powerful within the company itself. And then you finish the message with thank you again for your time and consideration, and I hope to hear from you soon. Best regards, your first name. Now, feel free to change the actual wording of this message based on the formality. So if it's because this is a pretty formal message. If it was a very informal, super casual conversation with someone that you already know, or you'll know how you need to adjust this based on how the interview went with the person. So don't feel like this template is inflexible. Definitely personalize it to the people that you interviewed with. Okay, now the next thing is following the interview. If you don't hear back within 7 days, send a follow-up message unless you're told otherwise. So for the unless you're told otherwise, sometimes at the end of the interview, they might say, we're looking to make a decision within the next 2 weeks. Well, in that case, you know that you're not going to hear from them for 2 weeks. So do not follow up in 7 days. They told you 2 weeks, follow up in 2 weeks. If they say a month, follow up in a month. But what you don't want to do is bother them before the date that they told you they would make the decision. Now, if they don't tell you a framework at all for next steps, that's when you want to follow up in 7 days, because that's a reasonable amount of time. So a follow-up message might look something like this, and you can see the subject line here is following up, your full name, interview, the date. Hi, Emily. I hope all is well. I wanted to follow up as I'm still excited about this opportunity and wanted to reaffirm my interest in working on your team, the company's marketing team, etc. Now, this next question is a powerful question because it's not yes-oriented. It's no-oriented. So the question is, has your team already made a decision for this position? A lot of people ask, am I still in the running for this position? Well, the company cannot respond to that and say yes because they don't want to get your hopes up or commit to anything, but they also don't want to say no and destroy the likelihood that you're going to continue moving through the process. So a lot of people shoot themselves in the foot when they send follow-up messages because they're forcing the company to commit or to dissuade you in one way. So by asking a question like this, has your team already made a decision for this position? The company can respond to you and say, no, we're still moving through the process. Well, they're a lot more likely to respond to this because they're not committing to anything. All they're doing is providing you with information. So this is one of the best questions that you can ask to get someone to keep you updated with where you are in the process and actually get a response. And then you want to finish with thank you again for the opportunity to interview last week, and I hope to hear from you. And if you actually know someone on the team who's making the decision, maybe you include their name or the team, soon about next steps or your final decision. And then best regards, your first name. Okay, so now I want to bring up the mindset conditioning that I talked about for going into the interview and getting your mind right before the interview. And we've already talked through the interview messages. So really quickly, I'm going to bring these up again. So we already talked about these, but again, the interview messages. So there's going to be your pre-interview outreach messages. But then in terms of the thank you message, that's here. So the post-interview thank you message that we just showed. And then the follow-up message, if you haven't heard back, is also here. Okay, so now for the pre-mindset, I'm going to read through this because how you're going to use this pre-interview mindset conditioning sheet is usually an hour or 30 minutes before the interview. Read through this 2, 3, 4, 5 times, whatever it takes to get yourself to the level of confidence so that when you walk into the interview, you truly are thinking and believing these things. Okay, so I feel excited and thrilled. I'm proud of myself for receiving this opportunity. This was not due to luck. This was due to focus and disciplined effort. I didn't give up. I didn't give in. I put in the hours. I put in the work. I pursued and earned this opportunity, and I feel overwhelmingly proud of myself. I am a service provider to the marketplace. I am extremely valuable and will continue to become even more valuable as I compound my personal development over time. I look forward to learning more about the career opportunity they have to offer me, and they will learn more about the valuable skills, knowledge, mindset, and work ethic that I have to offer them. I do not need this job. I know how to create endless opportunities for myself, and I am not reliant on any single one position or company. I control my career. Nobody else controls my career. I am not like other professionals. I can see my career 3 years into the future, and I have a vision for myself and who I'm becoming. I'm on a mission to pursue my life's greatest potential, and no one will stop me from achieving my greatest potential. I bring a mindset and a level of personal performance that is spectacularly rare in the marketplace. I don't need anyone else to motivate me because I motivate myself. I bring creativity, discipline, enthusiasm, and a relentless mindset for improving myself in anything that I touch. My professional willpower and my ability to focus is unlike anyone else I know. If I so choose to take this position because it's my choice, I know I will do it better than anyone else this manager has ever known. I am not average. I am far greater than average. And because of this, I am unshakably confident in my ability to contribute value to this team. I will interview them equally as they will interview me. I will have a balanced dialogue. The only difference is that they may not be the best opportunity for me, but I know I'm the best opportunity for them. I am humble and respectful, but I'm serious. They will not find another person with my mindset, dedication, or thirst for personal development. I am pleasant and respectful, but serious. This is my career, and I must look out for my best interests. If I am to pursue my greatest potential, I must make the best possible decision for me. I have unquestionable faith that if this opportunity is not the right fit for me, that I will absolutely have an abundance of opportunities in the future. My work ethic and discipline will never fail me. I feel confident, excited, thankful, and proud going into this conversation. I enjoy talking with other people, and they enjoy talking with me. I will enjoy this conversation, and I'm certain they will too. I know they have great questions prepared for me, and I have excellent questions prepared for them. I feel very prepared. I feel exhilarated. I feel prosperous. I feel successful, and I feel confident. My mindset empowers me to achieve anything I desire. I will achieve my greatest potential. I'm confident. I'm fearless. I'm excited. I'm thrilled. I'm pleasant. I'm respectful. I'm serious. So reading through this, it will put you in a different mindset. And you will be thinking differently in the interview if you put yourself in this state, in this mindset state. Now, I know that this sounds corny. I know this sounds cheesy. I know people, you might be hearing this and reading this and go, oh my God, I'm not going to read that. I promise you, you will perform differently. Because when you truly do, when you embody this, when this is internalized and you feel it, you will absolutely communicate differently. Your body language is different. Your tonality is different. And how you respond to questions is different. And it exudes confidence. And people are attracted to confidence. So You will have access to this. Again, I recommend reading through this 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it takes to get yourself to that mindset going into the interview. So this is all we have for Module 9. So this is the end of Part 3. The next module, we're going to be breaking down Module 10, the negotiation, so offer negotiation, how to approach that. So get started on the interview prep, practicing, internalizing your content, mastering the content, and I will see you in Module 10.